people, professors, scientists coming from other countries, even continents. And last week we had Manzoor Shah, Professor Shah, and he gave a great talk on biological invasions on a biogeographical perspective. And this week we have Professor Zafar Reshi, also from the University of Kashmir, because these guys are hanging out for 2 weeks here, and their last day will be tomorrow, actually. And I'm so delighted to have them. We had great times in Yellowstone together. Even they came from the Himalayas, they say, but they said they don't really experience such colds that we did over in Yellowstone. So we are actually working also on a collaboration, not only on our grant, but also on a more institutional level. Hopefully there will be student and faculty exchanges in the future between the two institutes and more research collaboration. So I encourage everybody who is interested in studying or teaching or doing research over in Kashmir, just get a hold on these guys and talk to them about what do they have over there, what can they offer. So after this, I would like to welcome Professor Zafar Reshi, and I will introduce him before he will talk about his main research about the plant invasions in the Himalayas. So Dr. Zafar Reshi is a professor in the Department of Botany, University of Kashmir, Jammu and Kashmir in India. He has about 26 years of teaching and research experience. His major research focus include invasion biology, biodiversity characterization, and conservation. He has more than 130 research papers and book chapters published in journals of international reputation. Professor Reshi has supervised about 30 doctoral students, including our last week's speakers, Dr. Manzoor Shah. He also has handled about 12 research and 6 consultancy projects. He is a fellow of the National Institute of Ecology in New Delhi. And with this, I would like to give the stage to Mr. Reshi.
Yes, thank you.
So really looking forward to your presentation.
Okay, thank you. Shall I have to use it?
Do not circling. Make sure you do
That's good. Anyway, thank you, Dr. Paul, for introducing me. At the outset, I must tell you that it is a great honor and privilege for me to have been asked to speak to you. Last time when Manzoor Shah completed his presentation, his last slide was showing winter in our campus. That was a bit discouraging. I thought that there should be some encouraging slide up front. I used it summer. This is our campus during summer. I mean, this is quite beautiful. All of whosoever is interested is most welcome. He will or she would enjoy their time in this campus. It's very, I mean, on the lake. There is the lake is somewhere here. Sorry.
Yeah,
Right. Lake is somewhere here. We are on the just bank of the most famous Dal Lake. Anyway, I shall be speaking. I mean, Yellowstone. We had been to Yellowstone National Park last time. Awesome, very beautiful, though it was winter. But I must assure you that Himalaya is more beautiful than that place. Only issue is that you shall have to come to that place. The expanse is too large. The diversity is, I mean, too great. Not only in plants, animals, and microbes, but in culture as well, right? I mean, it's an awesome place for anybody to come over to that place, and you will find it paradise not only for biologists but for everybody. Anyway, I shall be speaking. I mean, restricting myself only to plant invasions in Indian Himalayan region. The reason being that people do not know much about this problem, despite the fact that we have a serious problem on our hands there in Himalayas. Sorry. Am I to use it?
So that should be solved here. And you actually just
Move this.
yes.
Okay. All right. Anyway, that's fine. Now, the literal meaning of Himalaya is abode of snow. Hima means snow, and Laya means abode. I mean, it's a vast mountain range. I mean, stretching over 2,500 kilometers. And has a width of around 80 to 300 kilometers, and it rises, say, from an altitude of, say, around 600 meters above mean sea level to over 8,000 meters sea level. The exact altitude of the highest peak in the world, Mount Everest, which is in the Himalayas, is around 8,480 meters above sea level. Now, this Himalayan range influences climate of the Asian continent. This region is also known as the water tower of Earth. Reason being that 10 to 20% of the Himalayan, mountain region is covered by glaciers, and 30 to 40% of this area remains under seasonal snow cover. And this region is source of 10 major rivers that provide irrigation, drinking water, and power to over 1.3 billion people in Asia, which is nearly 20% of the world's population. Now you can imagine that this is a very important, say, landscape. Now, because you have a lot of water, say, outside the two poles, North and South Pole, most of the water you find in the Himalayas, and that is the reason why it is also sometimes called as third pole. I mean, they say that in addition to North Pole and South Pole, you have another pole, that is the Himalaya, which is called as third pole. Why? Because you have a lot of water, say, in this area also. I mean, this is the area of the Himalayas, and in the third pole you include this Tibetan plateau, as well as this Hindu Kush mountains. This constitutes the third pole. Now, this is rich in biodiversity. They say that out of 825 terrestrial ecoregions in world, you have 13 represented in Himalayas. And then the immense biological diversity, because of this immense biological diversity, the Himalaya is one of the 36 biodiversity hotspots of world. There are just 36 hotspots in the world. Himalaya represents one. By hotspot, we mean a region which has, say, around not less than 1,500 endemic plants, and then 70% of the area, the habitat, has been destroyed. That means it's a very serious issue. The region being rich in biodiversity, particularly endemic biodiversity. The endemic means which is restricted to this area, doesn't grow elsewhere, and then the land area is also degraded. Now, I would be, say, restricting myself to the Indian Himalayan region. The most of the Himalayan expanse falls in our country, India. The 12 states of India, Jammu Kashmir, from which we are, Himachal Pradesh, Uttaranchal, Sikkim, and Arunachal Pradesh. These areas, not this, this is Sikkim, this is Nepal and Sikkim, these are the areas, these are the states which fall in this Indian Himalayan region. Now, this stretches from, as I said, from Jammu Kashmir in the extreme north to the west of Arunachal, to the west, in west to Arunachal Pradesh in east. It covers about 533,604 square kilometers, and represents 16.2% of the area of our country. Now, this is what is very important that interests us. 50% of the diversity of, say, most of the plants that grow in India are present in this Himalayan region. And you will be looking at this. Out of, say, 8,000 species of angiosperms that grow in the Himalayan region, 40% are endemics. That means you don't find them growing anywhere. You will find them only growing in the Himalayas. That means the Himalaya is not only rich in diversity, but it is also rich in species which do not grow elsewhere. It has a very unique diversity that makes it, say, different than the rest of the landscapes in the world. Now, there are threats to this prized biodiversity in the Himalayan region. The potent threats are: we have a human population explosion in our areas. We have land use, land cover changes, largely triggered by this explosion in human population. We have habitat fragmentation because we are, say, promoting tourism without any plan and policy. We are constructing roads through the forests. We are cutting the forests in between. I mean, that is how we are bringing about habitat destruction. We are exploiting certain conservation. I mean, people in the Himalayas are not very rich. They largely, say, live on the resources that are around them. This is called as, they get the herbs and other things from the forests and use them, and when the population has shown increase, so has the exploitation also increased. And the another threat, which is a very serious threat but unnoticed, recognized threat is this introduction and spread of alien species. And the last one is the climate change. They say that Himalayas are warming much, faster than rest of our country, and as such, the diversity that is, say, in the Himalayan region is beset with problems. Now, these are some of the factors that promote, say, introduction of alien species and their spread. We are promoting tourism. We are cutting forests at a very fast rate. We are, say, introducing, this is a tulip garden, very famous tulip garden in Kashmir. And people do not know that the trade in the horticultural products is the major pathway of introduction of alien species. I mean, people are not taking, say, cognizance of the necessity of phytosanitary measures that need to be put in place while you are importing these tulips from outside the country. And then we are constructing roads, railway lines, agreed, without any application of mind, without any, say, environmental impact assessment, which apart from other things is also resulting in introduction of alien species. Now, issue is, what do we know about these alien plant invasions in the Indian Himalayan region? Kashmir Himalaya, Himachal Pradesh, Uttarakhand, Assam and Tripura, these are the states of the Himalaya. Out of 12, you have some amount of information about these 4 Himalayan states regarding the alien species, that too largely the alien angiospermic species, vascular plant species. Now, we have compiled this information because we wanted to do a sort of a SWOT type of an analysis as to what we know, what do we need to know, which are the gaps, how we need to fill those gaps. Now, so far we have found that there are 1,460 alien species in the Himalayan region. And then you have mostly, belonging to 764 genera, spread over 171 families. Now, the herbs are by far predominant, and then trees are also predominant. Among these alien species, you have, say, 843 herbs, you have 269 shrubs, and then you have 348 trees. That means all growth forms, the alien species of all growth forms you will find growing in our region. Now, you have, say, most of these species are perennial. Perennials, once they gain foothold, it's very difficult to control them. You have a very large number of these alien species represented by perennials, and you have then 425 aliens, right? And then you have just 39 biennials. Now, this is the status. All aliens, we believe this, that all aliens are not bad. The alien species that are introduced in a non-native region, all are not bad. Instead, it is a subset of species which have the potential of, say, spreading far and wide, agreed, and then increasing in abundance. The category which we call as invasive, right? That category of the alien species is a threat to the biodiversity. Will we always require to introduce species for food, fodder, fertilizer, fiber? We have been doing it in the past. We'll be required to do it in future as well. But what we are saying is that we need to actually be sufficiently, say, knowledge. We have to have sufficient knowledge to forewarn people about the potential implications of an introduction, which likely may escape from cultivation or from, say, domestication, then ultimately spread. Now, you have 210 species still under cultivation, not escaping. Though they are not native to our place, they have been brought from elsewhere, they are being, say, cultivated there, but they have not escaped. Then you have casuals. Casuals are those plants which, say, have been introduced, they are not native to that place, but require human effort for their perpetuation year after year. Naturalized species are those which, say, have established themselves, they are reproducing on their own, do not require any human, say, help for their perpetuation year after year, but they do not increase in numbers. As again as the naturalized, the invasive is a category which is a set of species which have established themselves on their own, but do not remain restricted in distribution and abundance. Instead, they spread far and wide throughout the landscape and then in the possible habitats, and then increase in numbers also. Now, regarding these casual naturalized or naturally invasives, this is a category wherein we have a species where we do not have sufficient information to label it as naturalized, though there are, say, evidences that it could be a naturalized species, but we do not have sufficient knowledge to conclusively say that these 104 species are naturalized. So is true of these basically 43 species. We do not have, as on date, sufficient information available to qualify these 43 species as invasive. And incidentally, may I tell you this, that there are, because of lack of knowledge, because of lack of effort, because of lack of survey and other studies, we do not have any knowledge about 273 species in the Himalayan region, which is quite a big number. Now, you don't have, I mean, the climate is highly variable. In our place, you have a lot of snow. The average rainfall is around 670 millimeters. And in the extreme east, in, say, for example, Assam, you have 2,000, say, for example, millimeters of rain per year. And then in our state, you have a place called as Ladakh, where you have just less than 100 millimeters of, say, rain, right? And as such, you are going to expect in this expanse of the Indian Himalayan region quite different ecosystems, and consequently, the nature of the alien species across Himalaya is also not going to be same. That means if you are doing work in, say, Kashmir, that is, you cannot extrapolate that work for, say, Himachal. If you are doing work in Himachal, you cannot extrapolate basically the same set of invasives for, say, Assam. Likewise, if you are, say developing a protocol for management of an alien species in Kashmir, that protocol may not be basically useful, say, for example, in Assam. Now, you do not have much similarity across these regions. But there are issues with these checklists. I mean, we have also published a few. There are others also who have done some work. There is incomplete information. There are certain, say, studies where details are not given, right? I mean, 240 odd species where the status of their invasion is not known. Now, at times, I mean, when we were compiling the alien flora of India, we found that there were around 1,600 species we ultimately published. 600 species were published as synonyms, I mean, which we call as taxonomic inflation. I mean, it is one species, but there are more than one name for that species. And in different types of, I mean, different workers have used those different names. And at times, what do you do is, instead of, say, considering it as one species, you consider it as three. Why? Because it was a synonym of the species which the person was not basically able to figure out, and consequently he listed in his list 2 species when they were actually one. Now, you have incorrect identification. I mean, this is a huge problem with us also, agreed. We had to actually do a lot of work, and nowadays, in a species in which we do detailed investigations, we take recourse to the current barcoding methods to correctly identify. We had problems with, say, for example, several species of Potomyston in our dal. We had issues with these Coneza canadensis. And during our detailing, I mean, we had the problems with Azolla. Somehow, the correct identification of species is also essential, very essential rather. Now, these are basically the studies that have been so far carried out. I mean, here, more detail. Here, only invasives have been focused. Here, detailed. Here in Uttarakhand, only invasives. So on and so forth. I mean, what we conclude from this slide is that a lot needs to be done, right? Very few studies on Himalaya are available. And whatever has been, I mean, regarding these are incomplete, basically, studies. And as such, there is a lot of scope for every one of us to work in this region to document the diversity of alien species. Now, we have to move beyond checklists. I mean, point is this, that as I said, the categorization of alien species is largely done following Richardson. You do it naturalized, casual, and then casual, naturalized, and invasive. We had some difficulty basically with, say, use of this categorization. Reason being that we had a set of species which were localized but dominant. We had widespread but occasional, were not dominant. Then we had third category, widespread and dominant. We lump them together in the third category of invasives when there are differences between these species. I mean, this species is the most widespread and dominant, naturally invasive. This also we include in this also we include in this. Now, if you have to prioritize, now out of that bunch of invasive species, your focus has to be somewhere on this. The species which grows everywhere in US and everywhere it is abundant, compared to one which, say, for example, grows only in this area, is dominant, doesn't grow elsewhere. Now, we did such type of a categorization for our alien flora. We found that 77 species somehow have to receive urgent attention. These are stage 4 species, right? Sorry, stage 5 species, which means that they grow everywhere in Kashmir, Himalaya, And wherever they grow, they are very, very abundant. That means they are causing damage to the native ecosystems. Now, this is a view basically of a species which has come from Europe called as stinking chamomile. This is Anthemis cotula. I mean, this is spreading like anything in our place. And incidentally, this spread of this species brought us to this field of, say, invasion. Otherwise, we were not knowing that there is any science called as biology. This is the species Coneza on which the group is working. This is also very widespread. This is a species which has also come from North America. It is spreading in our, say, forests, agreed. Somehow was introduced in our place as a medicinally important plant. It escaped this cultivation and now is spreading in our meadows, which are world famous meadows, Gulmarg meadows. Look at, I mean, this is a photograph of a lake wherein you have these submerged species almost taking over the lake, right? I mean, this is a hornwort. Right? I mean, nobody would guess that it's a lake. This is also a lake, and Asia's largest freshwater lake. And this is Trapa basically growing there. It's almost overrunning this lake. This is our famous Dal Lake. This is Potomac nodosus almost occupying it, right? And then, I mean, this is what the status of the alien species in our place is. I mean, I don't think that anybody would dispute basically the importance of considering these alien species seriously, agree. And then if you have to actually say, develop, say, predictive models, if you have to manage these ecosystems efficiently, then detailed biology of these species has to be studied. Because that detailed biology would tell you as to how this species is, say, getting adjusted in the new environment, what it does, how it manipulates the other species, right? And it may also actually provide you the cues which will help you to control it also. I mean, and apart from that, it provides you a lot of curiosity as well as to how come a species which is coming from all the way from Europe becomes so widespread in our place, right? And competes successfully with those species which have been living there for, say, hundreds of years, thousands of years. We have done some work basically on Anthemis cotula, Coneza canadensis, Gallensuga parviflora, Potomac species. By all standards, it's very meager effort. Because we had 77 species which were, say, class 5 invasives, which were very widespread. Ordinarily, we should have been having information, all those 77. But because of, say, paucity of funding, manpower, time, so on and so forth, we have not been able to do it. Now, this is one small, basically, example I am showing you of this Anthemis cotula, what it does. It is a ruderal species, it grows in disturbed habitats. It has a mechanism, these seeds have a mechanism of sensing their disturbance. Once you disturb, I mean, the land area becomes available, it's able to very easily sense light and also sense the availability of nitrogen either as ammonium or as nitrate, which we worked out experimentally and it is published work. That means seed is able to sense basically the environment which is there as a result of disturbance. It gets the cue that the conditions are very favorable for you to actually germinate, it germinates, and it produces basically it gets recruited in two bouts. One bout is, say, recruited prior to winter, the other one is recruited after winter. The individuals which are recruited prior to winter are very robust, very branched, very large number of flowers, very large number of seeds. That means this basically cohort, this species is using for spread, for spread, isn't it, across landscape. The other cohort, the post-winter cohort, they are not very robust plants. They are very small plants. There could be just one single flower. There could be few seeds. We believe that this cohort, this species is putting up for survival. It says that if all my pre-winter seedlings, say, die, then I would not be basically continuing in the habitat. The one way of, say circumventing the problem is recruit certain individuals after winter, even if they are very small, even if they do not produce very large number of seeds, but still then they would assure you survival, isn't it, under this, and then as and when the conditions become favorable, I would still be taking up. And second important thing is that which was very interesting, and then which we discussed yesterday also, it's very interesting. Now, under disturbed conditions, the theory tells us that there is going to be a lot of nitrogen available. There is going to be a lot of nitrogen available as nitrate. The plant should have been taken, should not have been having any mutualistic association with a mycorrhiza because there is no need for it to enter into a mutualistic association with mycorrhiza. Pay carbon to that associate aggregate, isn't it, for nothing. But we believe that it produces an allochemical that presumably interferes with nitrification. The plant, by virtue of having mutualistic association, is able to take up nitrogen as ammonium, which other species, its competitors, are not able to do, and as such this species succeeds, right? And then, because, though this is not very widespread in the population, few of the individuals of this species in the populations would show lot of overcompensatory growth upon damage by a herbivore. I will show you an example. Now, this is a plant of Anthemis scotula in our place only. This is the usual, the habit of the plant in our place. What has happened here is that as and when the rosette was produced, the head of the rosette was damaged by a herbivore, and as a result of that, damaged by the herbivore, isn't it? The apical dominance was somehow overcome, and as a result of that, it gave very large number of, say, branches, right? This we have not been able to carry forward as to what is the nature of the herbivore. Is it a sort of a chemical cue that is being sent here, or whatever it is? This is an open area in which if somebody is interested can take it forward. Now, we need to identify the source regions where from they are coming. If you have, say, for example, an international airport, if a species coming from Australia, we don't care because those species do not have the climate matching with our climate. Instead, species coming from, say, Europe are going to be, say, most likely they would establish in our place. Why? Because Europe and our place has almost similar climate. This is what's called as climate matching. And as such, if you know the source region, you would be basically taking many phytosanitary measures. The produce that is, or the products that are coming from Europe to Kashmir need to be screened more thoroughly than the products that are coming basically from South America. Why? South America. Why? Because their climate and our climate does not match. Even if the propagule comes, there is very least likelihood of, say, that propagule getting established in our place. Now, we need to know the purpose of introduction as well. We looked at all the studies, you will find always it has been the trade in ornament. The introduction of ornamentals has been the major, say cause of the introduction of alien species as an imperative. And we still continue doing it. We are, say, importing tulips from Holland without, say, realizing that with those tulips, there could be the propagules of these invasive species. And then once they spread, the benefits that accrue to the population as a result of that tulip garden would be much less than the damage that would be caused by the contaminants with those tulips. Now, what are the corridors? If they come basically to, say, for example, Srinagar, how do they spread? We believe that roads are basically the corridors, and we have a study. Look at this. This is distance from the road, and this is distance from the road. This is species richness, and this is species richness. Agreed? Now, this is of, say, alien, this is of native, right? Anyway, as and when distance basically from the road increases, the number of aliens, the native species will increase. While as you move basically here, distance from the road, look at this. The alien species, the number of alien species would decline. Agree? That means the roads serve as the conduits of spread of these alien species from one place to another. And unfortunately, we construct roads in our landscape haphazardly. There is no, no theory or a plan in place on the basis of which they would construct roads. Now, climate change is a very serious issue in our place. They say that in last 25 years, the temperature has increased by 1.5 degrees Celsius. This is not our work, this is our work of Shrestha and others. And the average precipitation has also increased. Now, what is the implication of this climate change for us? Now, it would influence physiology of plants, phenology, distribution, it would influence changes in species interactions, further shifts in distribution, extinction of some species, and actually there is going to be, as a result of all this, there is going to be change in the community structure and function. Now, what we are expecting, or what we are seeing ourselves also, that as a result of this climate change, the species which previously were not occurring in our place are now growing in Kashmir. Parthenium hysterophorus is a plant which is a weed, which is a very widespread invasive species in the rest of India, but was not coming to our place. But what we are now seeing ourselves, we have done a survey wherein we've located this occurrence of Parthenium hysterophorus in Kashmir, which means as a result of climate, what we did a slight bit of modeling. These dots represent the current occurrences of this. right? On the basis of, I mean, this is suitable climate, this is suitable, this is suitable. We expect that this suitable climate is here also. If it has not grown there, it can grow potentially it can occur there. And we say that in under all sorts of, say, this RCP is representative concentration pathway, I mean, which is in the assessment report 5. This is the way that the future predictions are done with regard to climate change. Now look at RCP 2.6, 4.5, 8.5, 6.0. You will find that this species is going to grow in Himalayas. That means this as the base, we are expecting as a result of climate change that many species which otherwise were not moving into the Himalayas are going to move. And as such, you would be having a problem on your hands, which so far you had not contemplated. And this is true of other species as well. And in fact of the matter is that this species does grow in our valley, should not have been ordinarily growing in Kashmir Himalaya. Now, this is now cricket field. I mean, this is Dal Lake, which has been overrun by this plant. This is Azolla cristata. Also should not have been growing in our area. And I mean, some people say that the waters have slightly increased. I mean, water temperatures have slightly increased, and which have allowed this species to overrun this lake. This is a class, I mean, if somebody is interested, this is a very classic case of rapid evolution. I mean, these invasive species spread either by phenotypic plasticity or by rapid evolution. This species was noticed just 5 years back, and this is the fate of the species today. That means usually 200, 300 years is the time for an alien species to spread, but this has taken just 5 years, which means that it's rapidly spreading. There must be something in its genotype which has allowed it actually to, say, almost grow very rapidly. Now, Robert would be interested in this. We did a very small experiment in which Sesambrium was included, on which you will be also looking. We had plots which were invaded, uninvaded. From uninvaded plots, we removed from word go these species. We always found that in the invaded plots, there were higher number of species. Now, in these plots, we had removed only one invader, which means that the other invaders were going there, isn't it? I mean, if we say have a Sesambrium versus, say, a Sesambrium invaded and Sesambrium non-invaded, it is too simplistic, agreed? I mean, because we assume that there are apart from Sesambrium, there would not be any other species, but there would be other alien species also growing, and you need to take cognizance of them also. Now, look at this. Look at this. You will find that aliens and invaded, aliens uninvaded, natives invaded, natives uninvaded. You will still basically find that the aliens were still predominant in these habitats, even if we had removed the target area. I mean, this is an indication of that invasion meltdown, isn't it? I mean, if you have one species coming, even if you remove, but before you have removed it, it has created conditions for other aliens to come and establish basically in the habitat. And which means that if you are targeting just one species for control, say for example in a lake ecosystem, it is too simplistic because the other species which are also alien, they are there, they will basically be taking over the lake, isn't it? And your effort would not meet success. Now this is basically impact on below ground biodiversity. We use the DGE, denaturing gradient electrophoroses, to document the diversity of, say, bacteria, fungi in invaded and uninvaded plots. Now, unfortunately, no systematic effort has been done for the management, despite huge problem which you suffer yourself. This is the way that we control weeds, basically in our place in Dal Lake. This is a deweeder that they have in the lake, which removes these weeds, and there is a study which suggests that this deweeder cuts basically the rhizomes into several parts, and each of those rhizomes develops into a full-fledged plant. Now, instead of doing a favor, I mean, a service, at times it creates problems also. Now, these are the people who collect basically this from the lake. I mean, they feed it to cattle. This is the standard way of, say, control, but way of controlling, say, these macrophytes in our lakes. But you can well imagine that this is not the way to do things. And we did a small experiment with this, wherein we added, say, sawdust, which is readily available in our place, right? And then we found that by addition of sawdust, we could be basically able, in disturbed soils, we could be able basically to, say, restrict the growth and the recruitment of one of the aliens, which is Anthemis cotula. Now, we found a species which was interfering with the alien species, which was spreading, which was interfering with the growth of the conifers. What we did is we identified the mycorrhiza that were associated. I mean, we thought that either this alien species is interfering with the seedlings of the host plant, or these are interfering with the mycorrhiza which are essential for the conifers to grow. What we did is that we identified the mycorrhiza that are associated under natural conditions with the conifers, pinus and citrus, which are very predominant, cultured them, germinated the seeds of these two species, added basically these mycorrhiza, and they did well. That means you can use these particularly ECM, ectomycorrhiza we used here. We can use these mycorrhiza as a means of, say, promoting growth and establishment of the species which naturally grow in the habitat than otherwise. Now, these were the species, say, Hebeloma, Boelitus, Sclerodorma suillus, and the hosts were Pinus wallichiana and Citrus deodara. And Hebeloma was very effective for Pinus wallichiana, while Scleroderma was very effective with Citrus deodara. Now, what we need to know, this is all we know. We have no information whatsoever on other groups of plants other than angiosperms. You have, say, invasives from, say, other groups as well. We have no information whatsoever about invasive alien animals. We have no information whatsoever about the microbes. And I believe that you have understood the expanse of Himalaya. We need to have a program as was run in Europe, what was acronymed as DAISY, D-A-I-S-I, isn't it? Delivering alien invasive species, isn't it? This inventory for Europe, you need to have such type of program, and incidentally there is a program as on date, say, under the consideration for such type of an effort. And then we are also exploring possibilities of, say, incorporating people from here who have expertise in, say, restoration and other things in those projects, so that the expertise that you largely have in the restoration and other areas could be, say, quite useful for us to restore the habitats which stand degraded to varying levels in the Himalaya. Now, we need to characterize these species, life form, growth form, invasion status. We need to know, what is their status. We need to identify the vectors. We need to identify the pathways. We need to quantify the levels of invasion in different habitats, isn't it? So that we are able, basically, to use our resources judiciously, both human as well as economic. Now, we have proposed a 4P management framework, which needs, say, some amount of consideration from you as well. We say that prediction is the best approach. Is there a possibility of predicting which species is going to spread in our place, which is not? And we did some, basically, work on this. The Shillong's, say, predictive, framework did work in our place very efficiently. Richardson and Tucker has also given a framework, but which didn't. There is a possibility now to predict whether this species is going to spread basically in our place or not. And the thumb rule in the invasion biology is that a alien species is guilty unless you prove it innocent. Not the other way around, that the species is innocent unless you prove guilty. Somehow the thumb rule is that alien species are guilty. You need to actually view them with a lot of suspicion, agreed, unless and until you do not prove that they are not going to be harmful. We say that prevention, if they have now come, then you can prevent them from moving basically to other habitats. Then you can have some prescription, say, for example, control measures, and then you can have a public policy in which the restoration basically we think would be an important component. And unfortunately, we do not have enough expertise, we do not have enough knowledge about this restoration, and in this Montana could be particularly helpful in habitat and ecosystem restoration measures, because they have quite good bit of experience in this compared to us. We have nothing. We do not have even a single, just one single paper is there, which also I didn't found that it was worth quoting here. You could be very helpful to us. I thank you for this. Any questions?
I have a question. It's a long question, but for me, I don't know. I'd like to know how you determine that. So when you look to the world, I know that's easy here in America, in Australia, to identify an invasive species, because until like 500 years ago, these continents were kind of isolated. But in Asia, especially in the Himalayan region, I can count more than 4,000 years of continuous intense human occupation. That's also armies,
many in and out,
trade routes. And the modern botany maybe is having modern bottom is only 200-year-old maybe. And how can you identify that a species found in Himalayas region is really invasive or it's naturally occurring for the region? So because it could have come 3,000
years back,
years ago, or maybe it could have originated here, but and migrates to other region. Then you think that no, it's invasive, no, it's naturally occurring for there, and it's just invaded another place. So how can you identify for a species come from the whole Eurasia, if they are invasive or not? So there's such a reason of so many.
We had a colonial past, Europe. Anyway, there are several ways of determining the nativity of a species. Where it actually belonged to. Right? There are several ways of doing it. Right? Say you have the taxonomic literature, you have phylogeographic literature when this species was first reported. Right? Now, issue is this, that you must have seen in my slide also, that in case this species had the possibility of coming on its own, through its own dispersal mechanisms to India, we will not consider it as alien. We'll consider it as we would assume that it had the potential of coming. It's the different story that it didn't reach. It will reach in due course of time. There would be certain species, say, which grow in Afghanistan only, are not present in Kashmir, but we will not consider them as alien to Kashmir. Why? Because we believe that they have basically the dispersal mechanisms available by which they would be able to reach, say, Kashmir. Maybe they are very young species. Maybe their propagules are not very high in number. But we do not expect a species from North America on its own to reach, say, Himalaya, right, without human assistance. Now, if you say that their propagules can't traverse this much distance, right, so then you would argue that, okay, it's all right. But natural dispersal barriers are there. They have been overcome largely by the human assistance and help, right? And once the human being becomes involved, the alien species are those which have been taken from native to non-native regions largely because of human beings, human assistance or related activities, right? This is, otherwise we have species from Europe because we had, European rulers. They would come and go. But we assume that on their own these species would not have reached Himalaya. They have been brought there, they have been cultivated, right? And then how to decide invasiveness? The criteria that we used was, say, two criteria. One was how many sites did it occur? It had to be for invasives, it had to be more than 50% of the sites it should have occurred. But say, for example, if your site is forest, and if you find an alien species just in one forest, we do not call it as invasive. We believe that it has to be present in more than 50% of the forests in our place, then alone we would consider it as invasive, and together with, if it is numbers are very high there, isn't it? And then for naturalized, there is a small criteria, 100 meters, the species should be able to spread if it reproduces by seeds within, say, 50 years. And in case of those perennials, which spread not through seeds, say 5 meters per 3 years, isn't it? If they spread, they would be called as invasives.
Okay.
How did you choose which ectomycorrhizal species to test? The ectomycorrhizal species you tested in that nursery experiment?
In nursery experiment, yeah, right. I will tell you, we have a phenomenal diversity of mushrooms in our place. But we thought that the mushroom, documenting the diversity of mushrooms above ground does not give you any idea about what is actually getting associated with the roots of the host. What we did is first that we took the root out, right? And then we had its DNA out. We used the fungal specific primers, to get to identify the ectomycorrhiza that were getting associated with these two conifers. The species which were commonly associated with these two conifers, say, across sites, we considered them as the most abundant ECM, which were very commonly associated, which we used it for culture, we cultured them, and used basically them in the nursery, They did well. And incidentally, there is a small incident because we were managing these seedlings in the forest nursery. The forest department lost all its seedlings, and the person who was handling the project said that whenever our officer comes kindly do not let him know that our seedlings died and yours survived. Agree? Which was somehow a blessing in disguise also, that there were very adverse climatic conditions during 1 year. Those seedlings which were say somehow having mutualistic association, wherein they were inoculated with these mycorrhizae, they survived. The others did not. And they do very good in the underfield conditions as well. The assumption is that if you say have this forest denuded for a long period of time, the inoculum also dies in the soil. And as such, if you put the seedlings only without say without the host, without the mutualist, there is every possibility that seedlings will die, which is a very common experience with the foresters there. And as such, when you are basically say augmenting the seedlings with a proper inoculating them with proper ectomycorrhiza, their survival in the natural forests increases significantly. Ji.
You mentioned the climate change impact on the biodiversity, and you mentioned the temperature increase by 1.5 degrees. What about the rainfall, the water availability change? How do we, that is also evaluated?
Well, in that slide, apart from temperature, there was mention of rainfall as well, isn't it? The rainfall, we showed that it's increasing, though it's not our study. Glaciers are melting in our place very fast. We are going to have a serious problem of water downstream in a few years from now. And we believe that people believe that our forests, which are largely evergreen coniferous forests, they are going to be, say, seriously influenced. We have some evidence for upward movement of certain species like Betula. Betula is our tree-line species, right? And then we also are suspecting that the disease profile in our place would change. There would be, say for example, we don't get malaria there because mosquito does not breed in our place. Temperatures are very low. Now, if temperatures increase, naturally these mosquito can very easily grow, and then you may have a new type of a disease. Even one small example I will tell you, that in case our winters become warmer, our whole economy of the state is somehow going to actually go to dust. Reason being that our main city crop is apple, and the varieties of apple that we cultivate in our place require long chilling period during winter. And if the winter becomes warmer, the fruits, the species would not basically be flowering, and consequently we get 6,000 crores from revenue from this. Third important aspect is that the major impact of the climate change is on phenology. We say that there is a possibility of early flowering, right? And if the plant flowers earlier, it doesn't get the, say for example, pollinator at that time. There is asynchrony between the pollinator and the flowering, which could also result in, say, yield losses, isn't it, of the crops. And then as a consequence of that, since people largely depend on agriculture there, and any impact on agriculture is going to influence almost 90% of the people in the Himalayan region.
So my question would be about, that you also pointed out that I would like that figure when with invasives there was actually more species in the plots than without them, and it was mainly because of other invaders.
Yes.
And you said also that your region is a diversity hotspot on the globe, which is true. And I was wondering, you have so many different species of invaders, and we have that theory and invasion biology that the more species, the diversity theory or hypothesis that says the more species, the more diverse the habitat, the less chance the invaders have to enter. So in your region, that seems like, I don't know, it's like really working in a strange way. And I don't exactly know how many invasive species are there in North America, but I think it would be a really cool thing, just do an analysis on having to consider the different regions, these diversity hotspots, and then doing an analysis on how many invasive species are there, because that hypothesis maybe globally is not true, because they have this, the grassland is more diverse, the less chance the invaders to enter.
Yes.
So what do you think of that?
Yes. The theory about which you are talking, diversity stability relationship, right, works under very equilibrium type of conditions. This is an equilibrium theory. Everything is in equilibrium. Now, you are comparing that with a system where you do not have equilibrium. You have a lot of disequilibrium, isn't it? I mean, then the ecological theories which explain this disequilibrium are different than what is happening in our place. Say, for example, the forest, coniferous forests are the dominant ecosystem. I mean, they are not vulnerable to invasion, right? If you do not disturb them, if these ecosystems are at equilibrium, you will not find these species moving inroads in the forest. What we are doing is that we are disturbing that equilibrium. We are, say, creating opportunities for these, say, invasive species to come in. How? We would cut, say, 10 trees on our own, I mean, timber smuggling, this, that, so on and so forth. We will have a road constructed. We will have this disturbance. We will have some forest fire, basically, isn't it? I mean, what you are doing is that the stability of the system, right? Because of the, say, interaction of many factors, both biotic as well as abiotic, you are disturbing those. And then once you disturb, that all of a sudden the system becomes basically very vulnerable to invasion. Otherwise, if you have a very pristine forest, you will not find many of the invasive species there. That is the reason why we are saying is that we are disturbing these systems, isn't it? To the extent that their capability, their resilience, isn't it, to invasion has been compromised. And consequently, these species are very easily making inroads in these ecosystems.
And also probably when you say biodiversity hotspot, you define a biodiversity hotspot on two terms. One is the number of endemic species. And
Disturbance. Disturbance.
70% of this.
75%, 74%.
So when that habitat disturbance is there by one way or the other, this basically you acts as a kind of corridor for these.
And not that to intermediate disturbance hypothesis is of Cornell, isn't it? I mean, intermediate disturbance does help promote species richness. Again, we have much beyond that. I mean, it is not an intermediate level of disturbance, it's a very high level of disturbance.
Any more questions? If not, then I'd like to thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you for having a viewed picture in
But it didn't blink that time because the Montana Tech had won the match.